And our first speaker, our keynote speaker, to really set the tone for today's event is Neal Cross, who joins us from Singapore today to talk about jungle innovation. What's that? He's going to tell us. Neal is the MD and Chief Innovation Officer at DBS Bank in Singapore, who have undergone a massive transformation, which he'll tell you about. But outside of that, he's a very, very passionate wildlife advocate. And this ties into, amazingly, the journey of transformation at DBS Bank as well. He's going to be talking about that. He's also a hotelier and spends a lot of his time in the Sumatran jungles. Not where you expect to find a banker, right? But there he is. So he's had 20 years of assorted experiences with major companies in the tech field, infotech, innovation, financial services. Recently won the Talent Unleashed Awards in 2016 as the most disruptive CIO. And that's a global award as judged by amazing characters like Steve Wozniak, one of the founders of Apple, as well as Sir Richard Branson. So you're in good hands with our first speaker this morning, Mr. Neal Cross. Thank you, sir.
That's better. Selamat pagi. Pagi. Horas. There we go. Yeah, that's. It's a great honour to come and talk at this event. I've been in corporate innovation for quite some time now, and people ask me to come and talk about digital and transformation, and many speakers will just kind of take you through basically product delivery. So they show you their mobile app, they talk about how they did something with social media, but for me, digital transformation actually is not just about technology. In fact, technology is the easy piece. Technology has never been easier than it is today. I used to be a games developer when I was 11 years old. My career went downhill since then. And I remember typing ones and zeros into a computer and then printing out the whole game on a printer, and it would be about this high in paper. And then I had to go through that paper with a book which would tell me how many milliseconds each command took, and that was called bug fixing. And it would take about 2 weeks. Now, recently, I built a website for one of my social enterprises using Wix.com, and it took me an hour to build an entire website. And so even though there's a perception that technology is hard, it's complex, there's lots of tech, it's actually way, way easier today than at any point in time. And so another interesting fact for you, there's less people working in data today than at any point in human history. You don't believe me? There's less people working in data today than at any point in human history. Per megabyte stored. Per megabyte stored, yeah? So the growth of data is going faster than the amount of people entering the industry. Many years ago, data was stored essentially as beads, shells, knots in a rope, sticks. And so one person could store, I'm not even sure they could store a kilobyte. And then we got paper. Then we stored data on paper. And then we started to get compute power. Very basic compute systems. And then we started to get Excel. So the amount of data per person being managed then started to move into kilobytes, into megabytes. Now we're in gigabytes and terabytes. And so again, it's a lot easier to manage data than it ever has been before. And these are really important trends, because I feel there's a perception in the industry that this stuff is hard, that there's more people working on data than ever before, but there hasn't, just on those basic maths. But that's not what I'm going to talk about today. What I'm going to talk about today is really, how DBS went through a cultural transformation around innovation and digital. DBS, as we said, is actually won last year the world's best digital bank from Euromoney. Yesterday, IDC gave us 2 awards, so the Innovation Leadership Award for Singapore and for Asia. And so we're continuing to win awards based on our digital transformation. Part of that is certainly the technology, which gets easier every year. But a big part of that is the culture. So I want to tell you a story that started just before I joined DBS, and something I didn't tell DBS about, that every Friday I would leave work at 5 o'clock. I would go to the airport in Singapore. I would catch a flight to Medan. And then I would spend roughly between 4 and 12 hours in a car up to a village called Bukit Lawang in the jungle. Obviously, 12 hours means there was a big thunderstorm. I'd get there about midnight. I'd wake up in the morning on Saturday, and I'd work on my social enterprise. And then finally, Sunday, I'd come back through Binjai, Medan, buy lots of things from toilets to tiles, and then get back into Singapore about 11 p.m. on Sunday, and then go into work. And I've done that for 4 years. Let me tell you how this started. I used to work at MasterCard. I used to run MasterCard's Innovation Lab. Back then, I think my dress sense was a lot better, personally. I could certainly, people used to say to me, how big is your banana plantation? Based on the clothes I used to wear. When I was at MasterCard, though, I was trying to invent an innovation process that could solve any problem. Innovation, for me, has nothing to do with technology, in my personal view. Innovation's about finding the right problem and then having a process to create an elegant and creative solution that's successful. In fact, my favorite innovation is the Moser light. Has anyone heard of the Moser light? No? You don't see much in Indonesia, you see more in the Philippines. But this is the Moser light. It's changed the lives of tens of millions of people around the world. Invented by Joseph Moser in South America, Brazil, I believe. And so what he invented, that if you get a water bottle and you put a tiny bit of bleach in it and you stick it in your tin roof, it acts as a light bulb. And so when there's no power and there's still daylight outside, your kids can do their schoolwork. The mother can do her sewing or a small business. That has had a huge impact on the lives of tens of millions of people. So it has nothing to do with technology. And so technology is obviously hugely important. I know the other speakers will talk about it. But some of the best innovations are usually business model or distribution model innovations. Anyway, so I was trying to invent this framework where I could solve any problem. So you put a problem in at one end, you get a range of creative and elegant solutions out of the other. But I didn't want it to be about technology. I didn't want it to be seen, about payments. I wanted it to be seen as something which could solve any problem you put in there. And the problem I solved was how to save the Sumatran orangutans. I thought this is a great problem. I like orangutans. They look a little bit like me. They are our cousins. They are, or they were, the closest living animal next to humans. That position's been taken by Donald Trump now. But still, there is only 2 apes that live outside Africa. There's only 2. One is the orangutan. The other is Donald Trump, humans. there's only humans and orangutans that live outside Africa of the great apes. That's all we have, yeah? One is killing the other. But that's another story. I'm sure every year in Jakarta, do you get the haze here, or do you just send it all to Singapore? Does it blow that way? You get it in Jakarta? It's probably a bit difficult to tell. But we get a really bad haze in Singapore. We don't get it much, actually, in North Sumatra. But in Singapore, some years it gets so bad, we're not allowed to go to work, which is quite a good thing, actually. But essentially what the haze is for me is this. It's animals being barbecued. This is what's happening in Borneo and Sumatra. This is what the haze is. It's animals being cooked and trees being burnt. 60% of Sumatra's jungle has disappeared just in the last 30 years. And so I wanted to see if I could help with this. So what I did, I picked up the MasterCard Labs team and we went into Sumatra, my first visit into Sumatra. And this process is very much about really go deep, understand the problem, understand the ecosystem, work out the stakeholders, and from there invent forward. So we spent a lot of time talking to the orangutans. They didn't talk back. So we talked to the trek guides, we talked to the restaurant owners, we talked to the people in the guest houses, we talked to the drivers, we talked to tourists, and we got quite a lot of insight from this. One of the insights was obviously that not many people know about Sumatran orangutans. They think that orangutans are only in Borneo. But Borneo, there's a lot of orangutans. There's 60,000. In Sumatra, there's only 5,000 of the Sumatran orangutans. They're actually different. Secondly, that the village is full of European backpackers. Now, the problem with that is not only do they smell, but they don't spend much money, and they don't have any power. And so the only power they really have is they spend maybe $3, $5 a day, and then they go back home to Europe, and they kind of click likes on Facebook. Obviously, that really doesn't change the world. Unless it's on my Facebook page, please click likes. So the concept we come up with, the elegant solution, was we needed to build a boutique hotel to attract powerful local executives from Jakarta, from Kuala Lumpur, from Singapore, who could affect change, who would bring their families, we can educate them, and then hope that they make different buying decisions at their large corporations. This was just a training exercise. So at the end of the exercise, we went back to Singapore. It was about 3-4 days. And I got a phone call from the Imam, Abdullah. So Abdullah rang me and said, "Oh, thank you for coming. When are you going to come and help?" I said, "Well, it was just a training exercise. We were testing a new innovation technique. We learned a lot. We got some great solutions." He said, "Oh, I thought you were going to help." I said, "Well, I'm sorry. I've got work to do. Maybe I'll come back in a few months and say hello and, continue our discussions." And this preyed on my mind. So for about 2 weeks, this was just at the back of my mind. And it's the old saying, if not you, then who? And so we had worked out a really great solution to help with the plight of the orangutans in deforestation. And I was in a position to do this. And so I rang up Abdullah. I said, "Okay, I'm coming." That invention we came out with, the boutique hotel, let's do it. And so I flew back to Bukit Lawang, and with Abdullah's help, we purchased the old tourist office, which is about 400 square meters of land, which is, one rante. I don't know how many R it is. And here's this, a very small piece of land. And we started to build. Now, I know nothing about hotel construction. Actually, I don't have any qualifications in anything. I left school at 16. In fairness, I'm the least qualified person at DBS Bank. So let that sink in a minute. I left school at 16, never went to university, never went to higher education. But I did know two things. Hotels must look nice, and they must stand upright. And so we started to build. We used innovation techniques. At this stage, I got a bit concerned because it looked like a car park. They said it was going to look beautiful, so I had trust in it. And eventually, we ended up with a beautiful building that used many different innovation techniques and many different villages to come together to make this a reality. It's stunning. And then we went on, and I put in more money, we bought some more land, and then we built another property up there. So we ended up with this beautiful, really high quality, they call it the Marriott of the Jungle, boutique hotel in Sumatra, which I built on the weekends. Let me show you a video of what it looks like. It's only $350,000 a night. So that's great. You know, I built a hotel. But the important thing is, what did I learn from that? I did something which is so extreme. You know, there isn't even a road up to the hotel. So the road stops, and then we have to have a motorbike to bring all the materials through a track there. There is some infrastructure, there's electricity. We've got a pipe which runs half a kilometre up to a waterfall to get the water. There's lots of little guest houses there. But this is the first high-quality accommodation in the village. My Bahasa's not so good, but I'm very brave. You know, I'll try anything. The important thing is I took corporate innovation techniques and I applied them in the jungle to uneducated, very simple jungle villagers. I say simple, very smart though, very philosophical. And they shaped my innovation techniques as we went through that to make them more simple and more strong. And I took them back to DBS, and the result was incredible. Absolutely incredible. So let me talk you through some of the things I learned. The first thing I learned is have the right intent. My intent, if you ask me, is very clear. I'm here to help save the orangutans and to give local villagers jobs and education. And cigarettes. That's it. That's my intent. Because my intent is very clear, it is an honest intent, but you don't have to have an honest intent. We all work in big corporations. But it's very clear, very simple. So because I was helping local villagers with jobs and education, the mosque partnered with me immediately. And so my business partners, the imam, the mosque, the amir, we're all in this together. Because my intention is to help to save the orangutans, orangutan organizations want to work with me. And actually lots of people do work for free, where they're making videos, doing marketing, helping me with design. Because my intent is the right intent. But think about it, the amount of people I talk to and companies I've talked to, I have no idea what they do. I have absolutely no idea. I'm quite busy, so I do events and, I do 10 meetings a day most days. And so I need to know quickly what you do, how I can align. I'm sure many people here have started to talk to someone and say, what do you do? Oh, I've got an AR-enabled blockchain VR platform that's going to give you incremental value. You're like, what the hell? What do you do? I've been in conversations like that where I keep repeating, what do you do? So my guidance is, don't explain everything you do, just have a simple and clear intent. Because then other people can understand how to work with you. I know what you do. That's really easy. We'd like to align with you because we understand. And so 9 out of 10 conversations I have don't go anywhere because I don't know what that entity does, whether that entity is a government department, whether it's an individual, whether it's a startup, whether it's a software vendor. So have the right intent. At the bank, we did the same. As you can tell, I do have a bit of a social mission. I don't let it get in the way of work, though. Let me tell you a story about this program. This is an award-winning program, recently won Millennial 2020 Top Millennial Marketing Brand. Believe it or not, it's from a bank. Unicorn, it's called. Let me tell you a story. Joan, who's quite a young person working on my team, I think she's about 25, she came to me and said, "Hey, Neal, I want to do something with interns." I said, "Okay, good. Everyone on my team's free to make up their own stuff and come to me with ideas." I said, "Okay, talk me through it." And she goes, "Well, we'll call it Unicorn, because it's universities plus kind of startup stuff, so Unicorn." I said, "I like that." She showed me the branding. I said, "Like that." I said, "So what are you doing?" Well, she said, "Why don't we take interns and get them solving the bank's biggest problems?" I said, "Oh." I said, "But what are we doing? What's your intent?" She goes, "Well, our intent is to make internship better." I said, "That is rubbish. What's your intent, Joan?" So we went through it. I said, "Okay, I've got your intent. Your intent is you're going to reinvent education in Singapore." She said, "Am I?" I said, "Yes." "Okay." I said, if you do that, we're going to go do it." And so what we did, we went round the universities and said to the students, "Send us a 30-second video on how you're going to reinvent the world." We got over 1,000 applications this year. We took that down to 60 of the top potential interns to work in the innovation group at DBS. We put them through a 2-day hackathon. We have a psychologist watching them to grade them on how they team, how they manage stress, how they lead. We took the top 28 from them. We split them into 4 teams. And then we got the top executives at the bank to give 4 big problems. And then we coached and mentored those students to basically create a company, a startup company, to solve DBS's biggest problems. And then at the end of the internship, they had to pitch to those executives to sell their idea. And through this whole process, they had mentors, they had some startup funding to do design and experiments. Half of the ideas the students pitch to the bank now, so our 3rd year at running this, the bank implement. Can you believe that? Half of the problems that we give to these interns, the bank goes into production with. They're 21-year-olds. And then we end up hiring about 60% of these new troublemakers, and then they join the bank. Not the innovation group, they go into the business. But why I said it's reinventing education? Education is coming to a train wreck. You think about how the world is changing, yeah? The concept of career in the future won't be with us anymore. They see this new generation will have like 8 to 10 mini careers. They'll go from job to job to job to job. Also, think about the gig economy. They might be doing multiple jobs in a day. Our education system hasn't caught up. The most important thing we need to teach students today is entrepreneurship. We need to teach them how to build a business plan, how to pitch, how to sell, how to do design thinking, how to understand data, how to build prototypes, how to raise funding, and most importantly, how to influence, how to get stuff done, yeah? And I know many of you in corporate innovation, for me, I'm not an innovator. My job isn't, as the chief innovation officer, I am an innovator, but that's not my day job. I just make stuff happen that other people think is too hard to do. That's my job, just make stuff happen. And so we need to teach these young kids how to make stuff happen. Because with those toolkits, the entrepreneurial toolkits, they can do any job. Yeah? Think about my career. I have no qualifications. I only ever do a job once. So I've wrote computer games, I've taught Tai Chi, I've been a ninja, I've designed aquariums, I've done free parties, I've built back-end software, middleware software, I've founded social enterprises, fintechs, startups, I've done sales, marketing, product, operations. there's so much stuff I've done in all different industries that now I kind of think I can do anything to a greater or lesser degree of success and fairness. And so I think the young kids will be more in the kind of my world than someone who stays in one industry and has one career. Anyway, so I articulated my views on stage at an HR conference. I was on a panel saying basically education in Singapore is broken. And I talked about unicorn. I got an email the next day. The Minister of Education will meet you at the ministry on Tuesday at 2:30. I went, oh no. I know my job as a Chief Innovation Officer is to slowly get fired while affecting change, but I could be fired really quickly and lose my work permit. And so I was a little bit scared. I went to the ministry. There was 50 people there. And I said to them, look, the Minister Ong wasn't there, thankfully. I said, look, I'm really sorry what I said about education in Singapore. And they said, oh, what did you say? We wanted you to talk about unicorn. I said, oh, no, nothing. No, I meant unicorn. You want to? So, so I talked about unicorn. Next week, got an email. Ministry of Finance want to talk to you. Next week, got an email. The tax office, IRIS, wants to talk to you. Ministry of Defence want to talk to you. Literally every single ministry in Singapore want to talk about unicorn. It was unbelievable. And to a greater or lesser degree, a lot of companies and government organisations in Singapore are doing a version of unicorn. I was even in Taiwan. I had lunch with the Deputy Minister of Education, and he said, Neal, I've always wanted to meet you. I said, the feeling's mutual. And he said, we've just launched to our PhD students, we've just launched this new program. Can you guess what it's called? I'm like, it's not unicorn, is it? They said, yes, thank you. And so our intent, a bit tongue-in-cheek, was to change education in Singapore. I think we did a little bit of that. And also we got a bonus one in Taiwan. And so you never know where your intent can go. The second thing around intent is, oh, wait a minute, I've got a video. Let's watch the video. Can we have the sound on? So this is unicorn, this is pitch day. So then we've got digital natives in the heart of our business, dealing with our most senior people, solving our biggest problems. Now, as much as I love my friends at McKinsey and Accenture and Capgemini, who would give you a strategy like that? It's been very, very successful for us, and actually we use it now as our default hiring platform for graduates. The second thing I want to talk about is the world of startups. When I joined, DBS didn't really work with startups, and so I had to work out a way how we're going to enter the startup community. When you're a big kind of corporate, like we are at DBS, a big bank, startups can view big corporates as a threat. And I don't blame them. Yeah, I've had startups before. I've seen how some corporates execute is around, they spend time with startups, they get their ideas, they get their thoughts, and they go and run off and do their own thing. Or they just get them to do all these hackathons and don't really pay them and just get all this free software off the back of that. We have the right intent. So our intent was we want to help drive Singapore's entrepreneurial ecosystem. We did a number of things to do that. Firstly, we never take equity from startup companies. So we run accelerators where we pay $25,000 for startups to come into DBS. We have about 8 to 10 at a time. And we coach and mentor them, and we accelerate them to be successful. We don't take 1% of their business. Why should we? We're a big bank. We made $4.5 billion in profit last year. Why do I need 5 or 10% of someone's dream? When we do a hackathon, we actually pay startups for coming. We have the big prizes. We pay them for coming. We pay them $2,000 just for turning up, just to thank them for their time. Because our intent, see, this is how intent works. Once you put a statement around your intent, and you use that as the anchor, then just operate around that, everything will work really well. I'll tell you a story. Our second year of our hotspot, DBS Hotspot Accelerator, I launched it in the evening. Launched it on Facebook, big social media thing. The first comment I had was some horrible troll who said, "This looks dodgy. DBS are trying to take your business because they're not taking equity. They must be taking your business somewhere else." A horrible troll said that. I was like, oh no, okay, I could be fired again. Another situation where I could be fired. This could go really, really, really badly. Second comment appeared. "You're an idiot. We've worked with DBS and their startup team and they've been nothing but helpful." Third comment. "You horrible troll. You're obviously not suitable to work with Neal and his team." Next comment. "I was in this last year and it helped me to raise money for my startup." Next comment. "I've been on the hackathons for DBS and they paid me for attending." Next comment, next comment, next comment. We had about 30 different comments from people we'd engaged in the past through our strategy that we want to develop the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Singapore, who jumped in to defend us. Can you imagine someone defending a bank on social media? Certainly not in England. We didn't set out to build all these people to defend us just in case this happened. But when you have the right intent, people respect that. And that was really, really interesting. So this program now, we've pivoted. This year we've assessed about 2,500 startups. We've had 180 startups pitch to the bank. And we're going in production, I think the latest count's about 9. So we have a huge funnel into the startup community now to bring those new innovations inside of DBS. But here's a tip for you. There's a lot of rewiring of your organization you have to do. You have to rewire a lot of the processes and you have to change their culture. For example, we've got a policy in procurement that says you can't work with a tech provider if they've been in business for less than 2 years. Startup. That's half the startups. Another policy says you can't work with a tech provider who don't make a profit. Okay, that's the other half of the startups. It used to take us 6 to 9 months from business problem to the agreement for the startup to start a proof of concept, pilot, or go in production. 6 to 9 months. We rewired risk, procurement, legal, IT, security. We can now do it in 4 weeks. So 6 to 9 months to 4 weeks. We actually think we can get it down to 2 weeks now. But we did that by going to each division, setting up standard processes, standard forms, and someone on point that when we start this new program, Startup Exchange, we press the button on it, it just runs through very quickly. That's what a lot of people don't talk about. It's not just about throwing startups at a corporate and, yay, look, we get innovation. No, there's a lot you have to rewire internally. Biggest thing, though, is people's egos. It's the executive ego you've got inside your companies who go, we know best. Why would we listen to students? I'm paid lots of money. I've been in this industry 20, 30 years. I know best. Startups don't understand our industry. That's the biggest problem you have to deal with. We'll talk a bit more about that later. Second thing I learned is that everyone gets fed. When I first started building, I was really excited. I thought, right, I'm going to buy some really cool tools. I buy like a drill, cement mixer, maybe a pickaxe. You know, I'm in construction now. So the first thing I bought, I had to buy, was a rice cooker. Yeah, a rice cooker. Because I had the right intent, the construction people actually moved onto the site. I had to feed them now. They belong to me. Well, I didn't realize that. It doesn't work like that in Europe. Now they live with me. I've got some at the moment. I've got, 30 living with me up on a beach in Banda Aceh at the moment. I had to feed them. Everyone had to get fed. It's my first and most important cost. This here is the construction team, Jamidi and crew. There, you can't really see it. You see this motorbike here? This is the bike that brought everything you see in that photo into the jungle. There is no other way in. Well, there is, but I can't afford helicopters. So everything you see, toilets, tiles, cement, bricks, except the generator, that was a 2-day journey with 12 people. But everything you see came on that bike. There is no other way. He's incredibly strong. He did let me win at arm wrestling, but I think, he lied. He's incredibly strong. But I need to feed these people. But think about how we operate in the corporate world. How many times have you seen an email where you get an executive say, hey, this new product or solution or service went live, and didn't I do an amazing job? Who's seen those at their work? Yeah? Basically thanking themselves. It's too common. And yet it was the 100, the 200 people behind them who actually did that. The exec just sent the email. When you're on a corporate innovation journey, once you've set your intent and people start to align with your intent, then you need to start to feed them. At the bank, we've got a very different innovation model. I am the only person in the bank who's not allowed to innovate. Can you believe that? Our CEO, Piyush, actually reminded the world's media about that last week at our Investor Day. I'm the only person in the bank who's not allowed to innovate. In fact, my team aren't allowed to innovate either. We are not the innovation group at DBS. The 25,000 staff are the innovation group. It's their job to innovate. It's in their KPIs. It's our job to make them successful at that. One of the ways to do that we found was quite good. I'm sure many of you have seen these crowdsourced platforms to collect ideas. We launched one of these. I didn't really want it for ideas. I wanted it because I have one tool to touch everyone in the bank. This year alone, we've had about 9,000, so about over a third of the entire bank has used this tool. So they've put an idea on there. We put challenges. How do we reduce branch queues? Winner gets an iPad, second prize gets a smaller iPad, and a third prize gets a tiny iPad. And people comment on them, they vote them, they engage. These platforms, though, can be seen as a place where ideas go to die. So be very careful on this. Most of them fail because the staff don't see any outcome. They put their ideas in, and then after, say, a year or two, the brand of that platform can be damaged because everyone's like, well, I gave them my idea, what happened? I didn't see anything change. And so you have to be careful about how you manage the messaging back about what happened to that person's idea. But it's a great way to highlight people. So then at the end of the competition, you sit with the business, pick out the winners to solve their problem, and then you do internal PR. Maybe they come and have lunch with me. They get celebrated. They get fed. And so it's really important that you recognize people who start to move and change their behavior to be more innovative. We've changed our award structure from best product, best deal, blah, blah, blah. We've moved it now into most ambitious failure, biggest experiment, biggest ecosystem play. Because we want to recognize people who are trying to do something different and be ambitious. We also use our innovation space as a way to engage the community. We have venture capital whiskey nights. We have ping pong competitions with our neighbours in a part of Singapore called Fusionopolis, one north there. We use our space to train bankers how to build drones, how to build VR systems, how to build computer games, how to build robots. Do you know why we do that? Because a lot of the jobs in banking are boring. Actually, a lot of jobs in the corporate world are boring. I'm not even sure who decided the world should be this way. Who decided that jobs should be boring and stressful? So we thought, wait a minute, why don't they have a bit of fun? Why don't we let them build a drone in an afternoon? Or come and build a robot? Or come and build a computer game? We even pay staff now to set up their own startup. We get you 3 months off work, if you're lucky. It's very difficult to get. But we tend to have them still sat in work, and we mentor them on the weekends. And we give them $25,000, and we mentor them to build their own startup. One of them, Hug Property, is valued at over $10 million. Jeffrey Sung still works at the bank. What an idiot. Oh, gone. But he loves working at DBS, in fairness. We're one of the only, I think we're the only company in the world who do that. No strings attached, no equity. We prefer if it's nothing to do with banking. We just want our staff to be excited about innovation and to follow their entrepreneurial dreams. And better they do that inside DBS than leave DBS and go out to the outside world and try it and maybe succeed, but probably fail. 9 out of 10 startups fail. Better they do that inside DBS and we can retain that talent. In the interest of time, I'll skip this one because this was an extra one. I'll talk about this. This is Mawan. Mawan is one of my young construction guys. There he is laying some ceramic. It was quite a few years ago now. I turned up and Mr. Mahmood's my driver. I lent him the money to buy a car so he could do the driving for the hotel. So he runs it as his own business. We just send him the guests. So he always picks me up out of respect, and I got a huge amount of respect for Mr. Mahmood. And so he picked me up. I said, I always have the first conversation is, how's the hotel going? Have we done this? Have we put the cement floor in yet? I'm always excited when I get into Medan. He said, yeah, it's good, but we've had a problem. So I said, well, what's the problem? Because Mawan almost died. I'm like, what? He said, Mawan, with a saw, almost cut his arm off. Like, real bad, really bad. It's like, oh, geez, where is he? He's in the hospital. I said, oh, let's go see him. He said, are you sure? Because the jungle's this way, the hospital's that way. And it's late. The flight was late. I said, no, let's go and see Mawan. So I turned up at the hospital. I went in. There's Mawan, who looks really bad. He's like kind of light grey. He looks like cement, his face. He's lying in the bed. And then his mother's there. She's crying. His sister's there. And I said to Mr. Mahmood, I said, Mahmood, what about his father? Oh, father dead. I said, oh, so who brings in the money for the family? Oh, Mawan. I'm like, oh, okay, that's finished now. And so the mother looked up to me, and she looked at me, and she realized, oh, thank God the boss is here. Everything's going to be okay, inshallah. The boss will pay the medical bills, because this was before, in Sumatra we got the free medical, yeah? Jokowi, the good man he is, he brought that in, but this was before that, so it's a huge problem. The person who earned the money, and they've got to pay all the medical bills, they are in trouble, just financial trouble. And so they asked me, they said, oh, Neal, can you pay the medical bills? And I thought, no, I'm not going to pay the medical bills. I'm going to pay half of them. So I paid half, not direct to the hospital, because they would have charged double. Mr. Mahmood paid on my behalf. And then the next day, I got the head of construction, Jamidi, said, Jamidi, come, let's have a talk. He said, what, boss? I said, you need to pay half the medical bills for Mawan. He said, oh, no, boss, this not happened, Sumatra. No, we don't. I said, but there was an accident, you're the head of construction, you need to pay half the medical. He said, no, not like this, Sumatra. I said, okay, you're fired. What? I said, you're fired. Take your stuff, take your tools, take your team, get off. He suddenly realized I was serious. So he paid half the medical bills. I did that for two reasons. One is, I have never, ever had an accident again. Yeah, never. Jamidi doesn't let young kids use circular saws and angle grinders without him teaching them now. Because he knows he's going to pay half. Secondly, with no medical in my part of Sumatra, I could imagine a scenario where someone on another construction site has an accident and magically gets transferred to mine. Yeah? And so that thought about how do you create a model which drives behavior. Think about KPIs and corporate governance. Corporate governance has turned into a process that basically says, don't do this. When corporate governance and KPIs is meant to be a process which sets the future strategy for your business. And so thinking about these models on, if we set these KPIs, we set up this model of operation or how we're going to drive and incentivize our staff, is it going to get that behavior change we require? And what is the behavior change? And also, how can they game it? How can they cheat? When I set the targets for my innovation group, first year, I set my own KPIs, which is handy because I always hit them. First year was basically all about activity. So very soft metrics. How many startups did you talk to? How many staff went through a program? How many programs did we run? Second year, I made them harder. How many new products went to market? How many startups got embedded in the bank? This third year, we've made them even harder. What's the new revenue from ecosystem partners? How many corporate banking deals got done in our innovation center, and what was the dollar value? I did that because I wanted the team to really put in the infrastructure to make us an innovation powerhouse. If I would have put the metrics too tight on the first year, revenue from new product, they would have got me revenue from new product. They would have gone just straight for it. We wouldn't have built this infrastructure that we have today inside the organization. So my point is be very, very thoughtful about what model you put in place to make this successful. We put a model in place to essentially get bankers to think differently. So what we did, we took our top executives, about 250 people, we paired them, put them in groups, we paired them with a startup company, and what they had to do was to invent a new startup. We took the biggest problems from the bank. I took about 22 problems from the executives, fed it into this process, and in 3 days, they had to have a working prototype, a business model, and a go-to-market strategy, and had to pitch to the CEO, me, the head of HR, and a venture capital. I wanted these senior bank execs to feel what it was like to build a startup. I had them with paper prototypes running around the shopping malls in Singapore, testing their little prototypes on Singaporeans, and then coming back and changing their solution and redrawing it, and then working with the startup then to build it into a working product. We run over 100 of these a year now at DBS. If you want to be a future leader, it's compulsory to invent your own startup company and pitch it to the executives. It's compulsory training. Let me show you how this works. At some point, I'll get to 100%, but It's a lot of work. But the mindset completely changes. So it's not like showing people a PowerPoint. It's not getting startups to come and talk to them or pitch to them. It's you are a startup. You're paired up with a startup and you are inventing your own fintech company. The final thing I'll talk about, which is good because the time's running low, is a safe place to innovate. I give my team 4 things. Here are my leadership things I give to my team. 1, most important, protection. Anything that happens in the team is my fault. Even the most junior person who causes a problem in the bank is my fault. Always, without exception. I've had to create a cultural bubble with our own rules inside the bank. That was the only way I could attract the world-class talent that I have working for me today. Secondly, freedom. They have a day job, but they can get on and do stuff on the weekends. They can start their own companies. Also, they can come up with their new ideas and programs inside DBS. We crowdsource our strategy every year. I don't decide the strategy of the innovation group. Everyone does. We sit down, have a load of post-it notes in January. We usually go to my jungle hotel. This year I think we'll go to the beach. And the whole team comes up with a strategy. Completely free. Thirdly, education. I spend a lot of time mentoring my team. I tell them stories like this. I tell them stories when I was organizing free parties and tell them stories about my life teaching Tai Chi and Kung Fu around the world with philosophy so they can learn things that they can't normally get access to. And the final thing is I inspire them. We only ever do the world's best. The biggest problem I see around ambition is self-belief. So whether I'm talking to a deputy prime minister of a country, a CEO of a large organization, a student, it always boils down to the same thing, the level of ambition. Can you be number 1 in the world? You might as well start high. There's no point in saying, oh, we're going to be like number 5 or 6. Why? Or, well, we can't do this because technology will say we can't, or risk will say, well, let them say it first. Shoot for the stars, yeah? Because the whole world will be trying to bring you down. Security, technology, finance. Everyone will be trying to reduce your innovation. And so if you do something which is kind of at this level, you'll end up down there. At least start really high, and then they'll bring you down to here. And sometimes it will get through. Sometimes you'll create something that no other company in the world has ever done. At DBS, we're doing about three of those a year at the moment. We do stuff that no one's ever done before. Anyway, a big part of that is ambition. To get ambition, you have to try things new. You have to experiment. You have to create a safe place for people to innovate. So Harry used to carry the cement from the bike up the hill. He used to play with the cement at the end of the day and make shapes. And I said, Harry, can you do the carving for the hotel restaurant? Like up here. He said, no, boss, no good. I said, Harry, it's fine. I think you'd be really good. No, cannot. Tidak. So I said, look, Harry, here's what you're going to do. Next week, just in this one piece on the restaurant, you're going to put the cement on, you're going to carve it, you're going to take a photograph, and you're going to smash it. And you're going to do that every day. And on Friday, I'm coming, so don't smash it. I took away the impact of failure for him. There was no downside. He got paid the same, and actually the job was better than carrying cement. I gave him the safe place to experiment, try and fail. Now he has his own carving business. He doesn't carry bags of cement anymore. At the bank is the same. We created a program called Sparkies. We do over 1,000 experiments a year. Simple stuff. Let's experiment with the letters we send to customers around return checks. Let's experiment with the SMSs we send them around credit card activation. Let's experiment with our marketing campaigns. Let's do A/B testing. We run over 1,000 experiments a year now, every year, just to try new things. Most importantly, the effect on the culture is huge. So when we're in a meeting and somebody comes up with a really ambitious idea, you know what it's like. Usually another executive will say, that's a stupid idea. Nobody would want that. We're not doing it. Now, you hear them say about half the time, let's experiment. The CEO talks about experiment. The chairman talks about experiment. In fact, some people, when their projects are going wrong, they say, oh, that's an experiment. It's kind of not quite the right way to do it. But if you say something's an experiment and it goes wrong, it's okay. And that helps increase the ambition level and enables us to do world firsts. Having great space helps. There's the Innovation Lab in Singapore. Running out of time, so I'll get to the summary. So the next steps in the journey, this is Abdullah here in the middle, the Imam, and construction queue. They've been living on a beach for nearly 2 years up in Banda Aceh, on an island called Sabang. We've just launched a beautiful, beautiful dive hotel up there, my second project. I'll be up there this weekend. For the bank, we're moving into the world. Actually, the water looks like this. It's incredible. The bank's moving into the world of ecosystem. Every company in the future can make money from finance. We've got startups trying to enter finance. We've got Google entering finance. We've got Facebook entering finance. We've got Apple. We've got Tencent. We've got our friends Grab entering finance. We've got Uber entering finance. We've got Changi Airport entering finance, selling insurance. Everyone wants to get into finance because now it's digitized. So we released the world first, the world's largest banking API platform 3 weeks ago. Not only did we launch over 155 APIs, so basically anyone can build a bank on top of DBS technology now. We launched with over 50 partners already wired in, a world first. No bank's ever done this. We had partners like McDonald's, Grab, Uber. We had small startups like Socash. We had social enterprises like Homage, all wired into the infrastructure at DBS. So now, we're an ecosystem platform company. Now, we can have hundreds of thousands of people working for making DBS successful. We just better make sure that everyone gets fed. On that note, thank you. The orangutans, thank you. And have a great conference.
Wow. Huge hand again for Neal, everybody. That was really a tour de force. Don't go anywhere, sir.
Okay.
The audience has got questions for you. I'm sure you've given them a lot to think about. But I think Neal has been so generous in his sharing with us this morning, laying bare what they've done at DBS and what an amazing story with his social entrepreneurships as well. So what we'd like to do now is jump back into the app. And what questions come to your mind? What has Neal inspired you to ask? What do you still want to know about DBS's transformation journey? Jump onto the app, fire those questions to us, and we will prioritize them and put those questions to Neal. So while you're doing that, Neal, I've got a question for you.
Okay.
You talked about, I guess, your career being characterized by bravery. Jumping from one thing to another, putting your hand up and saying, hey, I'll do that. I'm not qualified to do it. I don't have the skills, the credentials to do it. I'll do it. I'm your man.
Yeah.
Bravery, fear of failure. Especially in an Asian context, an Asian corporate cultural context. Does fear of failure loom larger than it might in a Western cultural context?
Yeah, certainly to a certain degree. I mean, there's, at DBS we've got a culture cake. So we've got the base kind of corporate culture. So corporate cultures are highly politicized. No one wants to look like their career's a failure, and everyone, wants to get their bonus. Then we have a bank culture, which tends to be non-collaborative, ego-driven, overpaid. Well, actually, I'm not overpaid, so I
just
need more money.
ego-driven.
Yeah, ego-driven. And then you've got the kind of Asian culture, which is about, nobody wants to stand out from the crowd, nobody wants to lose face. And then we have the Singapore culture, which is very much process-driven. I must do what boss says, I must follow the process. And that's the kind of culture cake we have to deal with. Once you start to crack that, then you start to see some interesting stuff. If you look at the difference, though, between the Western tech companies and the Eastern tech companies, the Eastern tech companies are way beyond Facebook. I mean, Facebook, what the hell have they done since they launched? Apart from sell adverts, really. Same with Google here. So what they do is they create something very smart, and then they get to scale, and then they give up and sell advertising. So Google, Facebook are great examples. Whereas the Chinese innovation model is very different. It's like, I want to make a lot of money. What do I need to build to get there? And then they just keep reinventing. I mean, Alibaba's perfect for that. So you look at the Western tech companies, PayPal, Facebook, Google, have just really sat still, haven't done really that much that's been successful since they first got founded. Where you look at Alibaba and Tencent, I mean, oh my God, they just have not stopped innovating. It's massively impressive.
Great. Okay, the questions have rolled in from the audience. Thanks very much for playing. The first question we'd like you to tackle, you can see it on the screen there, is how do you make it safe to innovate while it was said that every year you made it harder for the team goals, which are still adding more pressure?
Certainly, as I said, goals are not there to add pressure. Goals are there to drive behavior. And so for me, it's a focal point. I don't judge my team members purely on their performance against their goals, because there's outside factors. But it's really a kind of motivating message. So this year it's about revenue team. So focus on making the business make money through the innovations. But it's been a 3-year journey. And so that's what I said. You start loose, you get them doing activity, give them freedom to build all the architecture, the infrastructures. Year 2 is they start tuning those machines, those programs, make them effective. Year 3 is crank that engine and pay back the bank for all the money they've put into the innovation group.
Great. And the top ranking question is, how do you, or within DBS, manage your, I think the platform is called Ideas Vault. How do you manage that to collect ideas?
So there's a lot of vendors out there who have platforms like this. We use Spigot. We think that's quite a good one from Mindtree. So you've got, one thing about getting the thing set up. It's a cloud platform, so you have to go through the process on that. And then really, a lot of it's internal marketing. Innovation is for me, it's about sales. It's about sales and marketing. So you've got to sell to an executive they should try something different. It's going to improve their career. It's going to help them hit their bonus, whatever. The same with the broader reach is marketing. So you've got to get the message out there that people are going to win iPads. It's exciting. It's supporting the bank's, future strategy. So it's having that big kind of marketing machine. It's getting the problems from the executives and getting the right problems. So branch queues, drive, more credit card sales in Hong Kong, whatever the problems are, and then having a 2 to 4 week window where you market internally on the internal marketing platforms to encourage people to put ideas on there. And then initially, you have to have some of your team to go in and like and comment and draw out, expand on the concepts and until people start to get into a role on this. But it's a slow burn at the beginning, and then the thing starts to take off, especially when you put like $1,000 prizes on there.
Yeah, so that's how you get away from the whole notion of ideas going to die in the Ideas Vault.
Yeah. And then you have to market what happened to them and who the judges were. You have to have transparency as well. Otherwise people say, oh, why didn't I win the $1,000 prize? And you have to be very clear. Here's the judging criteria. Here's what we judged, and this is why they were winners. This is the business person, the executive who's going to implement them, and this is what the timeline looks like for that.
Great. Next question for you. What is the investment given to implement the unicorn and all the innovation events every year? So I guess that people asking for that question want to know how much this all costs.
Yeah, nothing is ever expensive. And so I used to run $1 billion sales business for Microsoft. I used to run the banking and insurance business for Asia for Microsoft. And I used to get this time customer and say, hey, this platform's expensive. I said, if it was $100 million, do you think that's expensive? They say, yeah, it's ridiculous. Who would spend $100 million on this? I go, well, on someone who can make $1 billion from it. There is no concept of expensive. Could cost $1 billion, but you make 10. It's the ROI on the thing. I started with 3 people and a table about this size in the middle of the consumer bank floor of like 500 staff, not even a sign send innovation. Nobody wanted to work with me. Most of the bankers didn't. I was the 3rd innovation leader there, 3rd one in 2 years. The thing is seen as a failure. I had no money, no team, no space. It's a sales job. Innovation is not about inventing stuff. It's not about cool and sexy toys. It's not about tech. It's convincing people that they will be more successful if they work with you. So a lot of the initial work we had to do was around rebuilding the brand, getting people to be successful, make it exciting, bring in startups and fintechs, have pillow fights, water pistol fights at our events, give them access to amazing visionaries in the industry. And so as you start to build the brand and the excitement around innovation, it's a movement. Money's easy then. Then I just go around the executives, hey, if you've got this problem and I give you 4 prototypes to solve it, would you give me $30,000? They go, yeah, sure. Bang, 30 grand. Next executive, 30 grand. Next one, 30. Suddenly, I had $600,000. 20 problems, $600,000. That was enough to pay for nearly every program that year. Then the CEO got involved. And then he put money in. And then I went to them about the innovation center. I said, look, we need a space for this cultural transformation where people can feel differently, think differently, dress differently, take off their tie, have startups running around people on skateboards, bicycles, drones hitting you in the head every 5 minutes, but definitely no beanbags. Hate beanbags. That cost quite a bit of money. In the press, it was 10 million over 5 years. Took me one conversation to get $10 million. Took me 6 months to get the design signed off. So the money was easy. It was actually the design. But it's all about the value. If you're seen as this little adjunct to the business which sits on beanbags and plays with like tech and don't engage the business, don't understand the business, aren't solving real problems, aren't having an impact, you're not going to get money. So you need a portfolio. You need the stuff you're helping, the incremental stuff you're helping the business improve. You're having the kind of mid-level stuff where you're helping with the digital transformation, bringing in startups, doing some inspiration and getting people engaged. And then you've got like a couple of moonshots at the top end. I don't know what you'd be, what's creating a business to kill your own business or that kind of stuff up there.
So it's solving problems and making stuff happen.
Yeah. And money's the easy bit once you've got the value. Yeah? I think the size of the businesses, turnover, 12 billion. Money's easy. But if I would have walked in there and said, right, I've got no table, I've got 3 staff, right, give me all this money, I need an innovation center, they would have laughed at me. So the important thing is to, start to get success, start to build relationships with executives. You can never go wrong by helping an executive reach their bonus. I learned that in sales many years ago, yeah? If you can align and help people achieve their metric and hence hit their bonus and get their bonus, then you're in a great place, yeah? And then they're going to help you. Then they're going to send their team to work with you. Then they're going to give you projects and they're going to give you money.
Great. Next question that people really want to know the answer to. What in DBS What's the most important aspect in innovation culture, and why is that the most important aspect?
There's two things. Ambition and ego are my two biggest problems at this particular moment in our journey. So as I said earlier, it's that being the world's best, being world class. And so we put a program in place this year. I took this to the CEO, who's she's a fun person to spend time with. And so we come up with this concept, and now we started a while ago called an Innovation Council. That means each business division must show their innovation capability and explain why, to a certain degree, why the thing they're doing isn't better than the world's best. And so the innovation group, we find them the world's best examples, whether it's in finance or another industry. We showcase that with them, and then we have a dialogue around, can you beat the benchmark? Now, if you can't, that's fine. It might be that the budget's smaller, it won't work in Asia, blah, blah, blah. That's good. At least we're having a conversation. If they can't beat it, then just copy it. What's the point in spending all this time inventing stuff? Just copy the thing. Obviously, change it enough that we don't get any lawyers, just lawyer problems, but just copy it. So that's on the ambition. On the ego side, it's the best thing to deal with executive ego is to get customers to tell them they're wrong. I love that. Oh, it's the best part of my job. I'm like, oh, I've got this person on a course. Great. They're going to build a prototype. They're going to go in the shopping mall or go talk to these students, and I know these customers are going to tell them they're wrong and it's a rubbish idea. I love that. That's like, because you can't argue with the client. And DBS, believe me, I never want to work for a bank. Lots of job offers, many, many banks across Asia. So their culture is actually pretty good from the start for a bank. But that's the biggest thing. If you can get the customer telling them that they're wrong early on, then they kind of say, oh, wait a minute, maybe I'm not right. Maybe I need to look at startups. Maybe I need to listen to students. First step is listen to customers. And then as they start to go through that, they start to realize, actually, it isn't about them as a person being the great innovator, the great business leader, the great finance expert. It's about the output and success of their division, no matter what it takes to get there. No matter if you had to have loads of students, loads of startups, work with the innovation group. It's all about the end result.
Great. A few more questions. Oh, a lot of interest in this one, Neal. How to convince top management to implement the innovation programs, since banking is a highly regulated industry?
Yeah, there's always a reason to not do something. Always. It's regulated, can't do it. Oh, security won't let us, can't do it. Oh, there's no money, can't do it. I'll just sit on my beanbag and play with my blockchain. There's always the reason. Yeah. Oh, I can't build a hotel in the jungle, there's no road directly there. Oh, well. So that's my first answer. There's always a reason to say no and not do something and do something easier. The best innovation, actually the innovation where you can really get a competitive advantage, we did this in India, is around regulation. So regulators never draw straight lines. So a regulator never says, you can do exactly this, but you can't do this. They always say, oh, you can kind of do something around this, but if you kind of go up there, then maybe you're not allowed to. So that's what regulators tend to do, purely because they never want to be wrong. And so if they draw a straight line to say, you can do this, you can't do this, and something goes wrong, they could be seen at fault, yeah? So what they do, they make it, rightly so in fairness, and also they want people to experiment. They're kind of a little vague. Regulation on cloud computing is a great example, yeah? Now, if you can play in that grey area, so what happens is then, as a bank or another corporate, oh, we don't want to go anywhere near that fuzzy line, because if we do, regulators, we're scared. But if you spend time understanding that fuzzy line, and you can come in really close to it, where your competitors can't play, bang. We did this in India. Do you know, we were the first bank to use Aadhaar biometrics. You can open a bank account in 90 seconds. You download the app, you go into a coffee shop, you thumbprint, and you've got a bank account. You're done. First bank in India to ever do it. Are we an Indian bank? Can you imagine all the Indian banks? Oh, these guys from Singapore come over and did it. Why? We spent a lot of time with the regulator and worked out where exactly that line is. Same in Indonesia, we launched Digibank. Kept using the ID card to open bank accounts. Photographs. And so while your competitors were going, oh, it's too hard, we can't, actually look at that and think, this is great. Best innovation does happen in constraints. Yeah? And that's another thing. If I do a hackathon and go, right, I want all you people to invent ideas for banking, guess what I'm going to get? 4 will be about Bitcoin, 3 will be about rewards, 2 will be about personal financial management, and 1 might be useful. There's no constraints, you get the obvious. You get the easy. And so if you put constraints on it, right, I want to do a hackathon to enable large utility companies to make money from finance where we can share the revenue. Now we've got a good constraint. Then when we do a hackathon, we'll have stuff falling in that space. So it's a balance between freedom, but and some level of constraint to make that successful. And that's what regulation gives us.
Great, thank you. A couple of minutes left for questions before we let you go, Neal, for a hard-earned drink.
We got
cup of tea. You indicated that executive ego is a big challenge for innovation. So how do you go around that challenge and make a difference?
Very softly, very carefully. They bite. They do. They bite you, yeah? So you have to be, you have to do some ego stroking. I have to be very careful because I'm also a foreigner. Let's just call that out, yeah? And nobody likes a foreigner coming over and saying, you must do this, you've done this wrong. And also nobody likes that anyway. And I think it's disrespectful is to go tell someone they're no good at innovation, blah, 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 you should be doing this, I'm the great innovator I am, kind of stuff. It never goes well in any culture, in fairness. But the thing is, you've got to know how much to stretch them. But if you stretch them a bit too far, they'll bite you. Ow. I think they got rabies. They literally will bite. I've been bitten a few times. So you've got to know how much you can stretch them. Every year you can stretch them more, and it's really on a one-by-one basis. So this executive, it's a sales job. What I did when I first joined is I created account plans. I've done a lot of sales in my life. And literally, we'd map out the relationships in each division, who are our friendlies, who are our blockers. We called them experts. It's a nice phrase. Who's got the power, who's got the money. And then I assigned one of my team as a relationship manager. I list all the innovation products we want to sell into there and how many. And then I drove that as a business. Pretty hardcore. But they all move at different speeds. My team would come back to me and said, oh, Neal, I got shouted at. They don't want to work with us. I said, that's fine. We always win. They go, Neal, we don't understand. I go, you don't understand. It took me 4.5 years to sell internet banking to Westpac Bank in Australia. 4.5 years. I said, we always win. So what you do, leave them on the back burner. Go talk to some more friendly people. Add some value. Do whatever it takes to add value in there. Some of the execs in the beginning, a lot of them didn't like me. I don't blame them. I don't even like me. But, I chat to them and say, oh, Neal, we don't want to do anything in innovation. You're the new innovation guy. Innovation's failed at the innovation group has failed. DBS historically have been quite innovative for a bank. And, they said, I've got to do a presentation. I said, do you want me to help? They said, you're quite good at this. I said, well, do you want me to build your PowerPoint for you? Oh, that'd be good, yeah. Do you want me to kind of talk you through how I would deliver it? Oh, that'd be great. All right, I'll come to your office. Nothing to do with innovation, just adding value. Then, a few months later, hey, Neal, we got this project. Do you want to be part of this? Yeah, thank you. It's a sales job. So you have to work around them, and rightly so. Some of these people manage billions of dollars. They've been in finance 30 years. They're really expert at what they do. You've got to respect that, and you've got to respect the fact they know the world is changing, and they are a little scared. We're all a little scared, yeah? Many industries are worried about digital disruption, and so you have to be cognizant of that as you work with them, is not to stretch them too far, to be supportive, to add value. That's pretty much it, yeah. And get customers to tell them they're wrong occasionally, which is the most fun part of the job.
Great. Well, unfortunately, the time's run out for this segment. Thank you all very much for your great questions. And thank you, Neal, for your great answers and for a really inspiring and exploratory session. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Good. So, folks, we're going for a tea, coffee, networking break. Bring your business cards, network, talk ideas, have fun. We'll see you back in here within 20 minutes. Thank you. For Neal, and our chairman Indra will make that presentation to Neal. Good.
Interesting, very captivating presentations.
Terima kasih, Abang. Wow, look at that. Yes. Awesome. That's very cool. Okay.
Thanks.
That's great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Indra. Thank you, Neal, again.
Brilliant.
And now, folks, coffee break.